Have you ever noticed how the smallest encounters can change everything? Sometimes it's just a smile from a stranger, a gentle word, or even a single flower. This story begins with something as simple and as delicate as a rose. But where it leads, you may find hard to believe. One small act of kindness can ripple further than we ever imagine. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments and share your place with us. Now let's begin. Every evening, as the sun dipped low over the city, Emma finished her shift at the hospital, exhausted, yet carrying a quiet sense of relief. Her walk home was long, but there was one small ritual that made it feel almost magical. At the same street corner, without fail, stood a young boy named Leo. In his small hand, he held a single rose, and the corners of his lips lifted into a smile that could warm even the coldest evening. "Evening, Emma," he said, his voice bright with familiarity. "Hello, Leo," she replied, her eyes crinkling with warmth. She bought a rose from him every day. It wasn't about the flower, it was about the connection, about the boy's bright spirit in a city that often felt too harsh. And Leo, in turn, seemed to light up whenever he saw her. Their exchange was more than a transaction. It was a tiny, perfect moment of kindness, a reminder that even small gestures could carry enormous meaning. Emma tucked the rose carefully into her bag and leaned down to pat Leo's shoulder. "See you tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," he answered, his voice full of quiet hope. With that, Emma continued her walk home, the rose glowing softly in the fading light, a small piece of beauty in her ordinary, everyday world. The next evening, Emma walked the familiar route she had taken countless times before. The city streets buzzed with their usual rhythm. Honking cars, distant chatter, the soft rustle of leaves and the cool breeze. But something felt different. She rounded the corner where Leo always stood, his little hand holding a rose as if it were a treasure. But tonight, the corner was empty. Her heart skipped. Maybe he was late, she thought. Maybe he had gone home for a quick break. She slowed her pace, eyes scanning every shadow, every doorway. Nothing. The next day, she came again. Same corner, same time, still no Leo. And then the day after that. With each passing evening, the absence gnawed at her more than she expected. She felt an unfamiliar tug of worry, a heaviness she couldn't shake. The simple joy of buying a rose, of seeing that small, bright smile, had become a part of her day. And now, with Leo gone, something felt incomplete. She asked herself the questions she didn't want to ask aloud. Where could he be? Was he safe? Had something happened to him? Emma's thoughts returned again and again to that innocent little boy, standing proudly with his roses, always greeting her with that hopeful smile. And now the thought of him anywhere but here in danger or distress sent a shiver down her spine. By the fourth day, Emma's concern had grown into a restless urgency. Every morning at work, she found herself glancing at the clock, counting down the hours until she could walk the same path again, hoping for even the briefest glimpse of him. When she arrived that evening and saw the corner still empty, she stopped in her tracks. The rose stand was gone, the boy was gone, and the bustling city seemed suddenly colder, quieter, almost indifferent to the absence of one small boy who had meant so much. Emma stood there, hands clutched around her bag, a pang of helplessness settling over her. She had no idea where he had gone, who he might be with, or what had taken him away. But she knew one thing. She couldn't just walk home, pretending everything was normal, pretending she hadn't noticed that the brightest little spark on this corner had vanished. A deep resolve began to form within her. She would find him. She didn't know how or what she would face, but the thought of leaving him to whatever fate had taken him was unbearable. Not when she had shared so many quiet, beautiful evenings with him. Not when she knew somehow that the small, fragile rose he offered each day represented more than money. It represented hope. That night, she lingered on the corner a little longer than usual, glancing down every street, listening to every footstep, hoping, praying that somehow, she would see him again. Days passed, and the city moved on, unaware of the small absence that had begun to weigh so heavily on Emma's heart. Each evening, she followed the same route home, half expecting to see Leo's familiar figure and the bright, hopeful smile that always greeted her. But every time, she was met only with emptiness, a quiet corner where joy once stood. The first day without him had felt like a minor disappointment. Perhaps he was sick, or maybe he had an errand to run. But as the hours turned into 2 and then 3 and then 4 days, Emma's worry began to grow. At work, she found herself distracted. The sounds of monitors beeping, patients' murmurs, and footsteps in the hospital corridors faded into a distant hum. Her mind kept returning to that little boy. She imagined him standing alone somewhere, holding nothing but a wilted rose, hoping someone might notice. Her chest tightened with the helplessness she couldn't shake. "Where are you, Leo?" she thought. "Are you okay?" Every evening, she walked a little slower, peering into alleyways, behind parked cars, under awnings, anywhere a small boy might hide. Her eyes scanned faces in the crowd, searching for a glimpse of the familiar. Each stranger's face became a fleeting possibility. Each shadow sparked hope, then disappointment. She remembered the first time she had bought a rose from him. He had looked up at her with eyes too wise for his age and had whispered, "It's a magic rose. It makes people happy." And now, without him, her own evening walks felt emptier, less magical. The thought of him in trouble, of him alone in some dark corner of the city, made her stomach knot. What if he was hurt? What if he needed help and there was no one there to give it? Her mind raced, imagining every possible scenario. Perhaps his mother was sick. Perhaps he had nowhere to go. Perhaps he was scared. She couldn't sit with that uncertainty. Emma knew she had to act, but she didn't know where to start. All she had were fragments of the boy she had come to care about so deeply. His bright smile, the careful way he held each rose, the tiny hope he carried in his heart. And so every night, as she returned home with her own small sense of frustration and fear, she promised herself she wouldn't rest until she found him. Not just to buy another rose, but to make sure that the boy who had brought her so much quiet joy was safe. The city lights blurred in her eyes as she stared down the street where he should have been. And in that moment, she understood that this wasn't just about a missing rose. It was about the boy she had come to care for, the boy who had somehow become a part of her life, and the boy who needed her now more than ever. By the 5th evening, Emma could no longer walk past the corner without stopping. Her worry had grown too heavy to ignore, gnawing at her with every step. She needed answers. She needed to know where Leo was and why he had disappeared so suddenly. She approached the small food cart, tucked into the side of the street. The vendor, a man with a kindly face and eyes that seemed to see more than most, glanced up as she drew near. "Evening," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady, though the concern in it was unmistakable. "Evening, Miss Emma," the vendor replied. "You're looking for the boy, aren't you?" Emma nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "Yes, Leo. Have you seen him? Is he okay?" The man hesitated, glancing down at the cart as if he hadn't expected anyone to ask. I saw him a few days ago," he said slowly. "A woman. She looked unwell, sick maybe. She was leading him somewhere. I think he went with her willingly," but his voice trailed off, leaving the unspoken worry hanging in the air. Emma's heart sank. The thought of Leo being with someone who might not have his best interests at heart made her stomach twist. She felt an urgent need to find him, to make sure he was safe. "Do you know where she took him?" she asked, leaning in, trying to catch every detail. The vendor nodded slowly. "There's an old apartment building a few blocks from here. It's run down, not many people go there. That's the last I saw of him." Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. The streets were no longer just a route home. They had become a path she had to follow, a trail that might lead her to the boy who had unknowingly captured her heart. As she walked toward the building, the city around her seemed to blur. Neon lights reflected off puddles from an earlier rain. Car horns sounded distant, and the laughter of children playing in the park faded into nothing. All that mattered was finding Leo. She slowed her steps, scanning the entrances to the old apartments. The building loomed ahead, its paint peeling and windows dusty, a stark contrast to the cheerful corner where Leo had always stood. Her pulse quickened. She imagined him inside, small and fragile, trying to make sense of whatever had brought him there. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she approached the main door. She hesitated, taking one last deep breath. She couldn't predict what she would find inside, but she knew she had to go in. She had to see for herself. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her, but beneath it was a stubborn determination. She had been waiting for answers for too long. And now, at last, she was finally close. With a soft push, the door creaked open, and the dim light of the hallway stretched before her. Emma stepped inside, her heart heavy with worry, but buoyed by hope. Somewhere in this building was Leo, and she would not leave until she found him. The hallway was narrow, dimly lit, and smelled faintly of old paint and damp walls. Emma moved slowly, each step careful, almost reverent, as if she might disturb something delicate, something she was meant to protect. She followed the directions the vendor had given her, weaving through the maze of apartments. Every door she passed was closed, every window shuttered, giving nothing away. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope. "Please let him be okay," she whispered to herself. At the end of the hall, a faint light seeped from beneath the door. She paused, listening. The quiet sound of life, soft coughs, a muffled sigh, the creak of floorboards reached her ears. Her pulse quickened. Could it be him? She knocked gently. "Leo?" she called softly, her voice trembling just enough to reveal her worry. There was no immediate answer, but then the faintest shuffle, followed by the sound of a small, hesitant voice. "Who's there?" "It's Emma from the corner," she said, keeping her voice low and warm. "I was worried when I didn't see you. I just want to know you're okay." A long pause. Emma could feel the silence, heavy with uncertainty. Then the slow, cautious turn of a lock. The door creaked open just a crack, held in place by a security chain. A single, wary eye peered out from the darkness, and then a wave of recognition. The chain rattled and slipped loose. The door opened slowly, and there he was, Leo, smaller than she remembered, but with eyes still full of that quiet courage. In the dim light behind him, she saw what immediately stole her breath. His mother, a frail woman named Sarah, barely able to lift her head from the bed. Emma stepped closer, careful not to startle him. "Leo, what's happened? Why didn't you come to the corner?" His eyes flicked to hers, a mixture of pride and worry shimmering in their depths. I've been busy," he said quietly. "She's sick. I've been taking care of her." Emma's heart tightened. She looked past him to the woman, lying on the small bed. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. The room was sparse, quiet except for the faint sound of a ragged blanket shifting as Leo adjusted her pillow. Tears pricked Emma's eyes. The little boy she had seen every evening, offering her a simple rose with a smile, had been carrying a weight far greater than anyone could imagine. He had been working quietly, silently, without complaint, trying to keep the world together for someone he loved. Leo's voice trembled as he spoke again. "I've been selling roses to get medicine for her. I wanted to help. I didn't want anyone to worry." Emma knelt beside him, her own hand shaking as she reached out. "Leo, you've been so brave," she whispered, "but you don't have to do this alone." He looked at her, uncertainty and hope mingling in his gaze. And in that moment, Emma realized that the small roses he had offered her were more than just flowers. They were symbols of love, sacrifice, and resilience. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. She was here now, and she would help. Emma's eyes slowly adjusted to the dim light of the apartment, and what she saw made her stomach twist. The small room was cluttered but lived in, a quiet testament to a life carried with struggle and perseverance. And there on the single worn bed lay a woman whose frailty took Emma's breath away. The woman's skin was pale, almost translucent under the weak light filtering through the dusty window. Her breathing was shallow, each exhale a soft, painful whisper that seemed to echo in the tiny space. Her hair, once dark, was streaked with gray, and her face bore the traces of long-term illness and worry. Emma knelt carefully beside the bed, crouching to meet the boy's gaze. Leo stood stiffly, holding a small blanket around her shoulders, his own eyes wide with worry and exhaustion. She could see the strain in the way he carried himself, the quiet determination that had been guiding him day after day. "You've been taking care of her all by yourself?" Emma asked gently, her voice catching slightly. Leo nodded, looking down at the floor. I have to. She's sick. I sell the roses to buy her medicine. His voice was small, but it carried the weight of the world. I don't want her to be alone. I can't let her be alone. Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. The innocence of the boy she had known at the street corner, the one who offered roses with a smile, was intertwined with strength and courage far beyond his years. He had been sacrificing so much, silently, for someone he loved. She reached out, gently placing a hand on Leo's shoulder. You've been carrying a very heavy burden, she whispered, but you don't have to do it alone. He looked up at her then, vulnerability flickering across his face. I just wanted her to get better. I thought maybe if I worked hard enough, I could make it happen. Emma's chest tightened. She looked down at the woman, taking in the signs of illness, the pallor, the weakness, the quiet suffering. It was clear that without immediate help, this frailty could turn into something far more dangerous. Her professional instincts, honed through years of nursing, kicked in immediately. You've been doing everything you could, she said softly. And now I'm going to help. We're going to make sure she gets the care she needs. She gently checked the woman's vitals, her hands steady but her heart racing. The truth hit her fully. This boy had been facing a situation no child should ever have to bear. And yet, here he was, doing everything he could to protect his mother, his bravery shining brighter than any rose. Emma's eyes met Leo's again. We're going to get her better, she promised. I won't let anything happen to her. For a moment, the room was quiet except for the soft, uneven breaths of the woman on the bed. Then, Leo exhaled, a mixture of relief and hope, finally allowing himself to lean slightly against the wall. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She had found him. She had found the reason for his absence. And now, together, they could face the challenges ahead. Leo shifted uncomfortably, his small hands fidgeting with the edge of the blanket draped over his mother. His eyes were wide, searching Emma's face for understanding, for judgment, for anything that would make this moment easier for him. I sell the roses, he began softly, his voice trembling just enough to reveal the weight he had been carrying. I sell them every day to get money for her medicine. His gaze flicked toward the frail woman on the bed. She needs it. I can't let her go without it. Emma felt her chest tighten. She had known he was a sweet, brave boy, but hearing the full truth of what he'd been doing alone hit her harder than she expected. This was a story about a boy selling flowers on the street. This was a story about courage, love, and sacrifice that no child should ever have to bear. You've been taking care of her all by yourself? Emma asked gently, her voice soft, careful. Leo nodded, biting his lip. I have to. I don't want anyone to be sick and alone. She's all I have. I couldn't let her suffer. Emma knelt closer, placing her hands on his small shoulders. Leo, you've been so brave, she said, her voice filled with warmth and awe. But you don't have to carry this alone. You've done everything you could, and that's more than anyone could ask. But now it's my turn to help. He looked up at her, a flicker of relief crossing his face. You mean it? I do, Emma replied firmly. We're going to make sure she gets the medicine she needs. We're going to make sure she gets a doctor. You don't have to worry anymore. For first time in days, Leo allowed himself a small smile. It was timid, almost fragile, but it carried the weight of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. Emma could see it, and it made her heart ache for the boy who'd been so strong for so long. She turned her attention to the woman lying in the bed, assessing her condition with careful, practiced movements. The signs of prolonged illness were clear, but Emma's presence brought a sense of reassurance that the room had been missing. You've been doing everything you can, she said softly, her hand steady as she checked the woman's pulse. And it's brave what you've done, but now we're going to make it better. Leo's eyes glistened. I wanted her to get better, he whispered, the small confession carrying years of worry in its weight. Emma knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his back. And she will. You've been the strongest person I know, Leo. But even the strongest need help sometimes. And that's what I'm here for. A quiet peace settled in the room, mingling with the soft sounds of the city outside. For the first time since she had found him, Leo seemed to exhale fully, letting go of just a little of the tension that had held him for so long. Emma looked at him, her voice gentle but firm. "You've done something remarkable. You've loved her in a way most people could never understand. And now, we'll make sure that love doesn't go unrewarded." The boy nodded, still unsure but trusting. And in that small, dimly lit room, a bond of care and hope was forged, a bond that would carry them to the challenges still to come. Emma felt a surge of determination wash over her as she took in the scene before her. The small, frail woman on the bed, the exhausted boy at her side. It was impossible to ignore the urgency of the moment. She knew, without hesitation, that she had to act. "Leo," she said softly, kneeling beside him, "we're going to help her right now. You've done more than anyone could ever expect, but she needs proper care, and we can't wait any longer." His small hands trembled slightly as he nodded, a mixture of relief and worry crossing his face. I don't know what to do," he admitted quietly. Emma smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to. I'm here, and we'll do this together." She turned her attention to the woman, her professional instincts kicking in, checking her pulse, assessing her breathing, noticing the subtle signs of prolonged illness. Every detail mattered. She adjusted the pillows, made sure the blanket was tucked snugly, and spoke softly to calm both Leo and his mother. "You've been very brave," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from the woman's forehead. "But now it's time to let someone else take care of you for a while." Emma stood, glancing around the small apartment. She knew that getting the right care would take more than just her presence. There was medicine to buy, a doctor contact, and a family who'd been struggling in silence for far too long. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, calling a trusted colleague. "I've got a situation here," she explained, her voice calm but urgent. "There's a young boy caring for his sick mother, and she needs immediate medical attention." As she spoke, she noticed Leo watching her closely, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. He had been carrying the weight of responsibility alone for so long, and now he could finally breathe, even if just a little. Within the hour, a doctor arrived, assessing the woman's condition with precision and care. Emma translated the details, provided observations, and helped ensure that she received the right treatment. She moved with purpose, every action deliberate, every decision focused on one goal, saving a life. Leo hovered nearby, hesitant but relieved, as Emma guided him gently. "You've done everything you could," she said softly. "Now, let us take over for a little while. You deserve a break too." With medicine in hand and instructions carefully noted, Emma ensured that the woman was comfortable and stable. Her eyes met Leo's again. "You see," she said, "you didn't have to do this alone. And now, you've helped her in a way that will actually make a difference." The boy nodded slowly, absorbing the reality that his sacrifices had not been in vain, that his efforts had been recognized and supported. And in that quiet, small apartment, a sense of relief began to settle, a fragile but growing hope that things could get better. Emma stayed a little longer, making sure everything was in place, checking once more that both mother and son were comfortable. She knew that this was just the beginning of their journey, but the first steps had been taken, and in that moment, she allowed herself to hope that together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days that followed were a whirlwind of care, hope, and quiet victories. Emma stayed close, making sure that Sarah, the frail, bedridden woman, received every bit of attention she needed. She administered medicine, checked vitals, adjusted pillows, and offered the comfort of a steady presence. Every small movement mattered. Every gesture carried weight. Leo watched wide-eyed, a mix of relief and wonder flickering across his face. The burden he had carried alone for so long was finally being shared. He no longer had to face the overwhelming responsibility by himself. "See," Emma said one afternoon, brushing back a loose strand of hair from Sarah's forehead. She's starting to respond. Every small step counts. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, weak but aware. A faint smile crossed her lips as she looked at Emma and then at Leo. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse but sincere. "Thank you both for not letting me give up." Tears welled up in Leo's eyes. He He had worked tirelessly, selling roses day after day, believing that somehow his efforts alone could make a difference. And now, finally, he could see that his love and determination had not gone unnoticed. Emma knelt beside him. "You've done something remarkable, Leo," she said softly. "Your courage, your care, it's what's keeping her going. And now, with a little help, she's going to be okay." The room, once heavy with fear and uncertainty, began to feel lighter. Laughter returned in small doses, gentle and fragile at first, as Leo told quiet stories to distract his mother from the discomfort. Emma smiled, watching him, feeling a swell of admiration for the boy who had carried so much with such bravery. Over the next few days, Sarah's strength improved steadily. Her color returned. Her breathing became easier, and she was able to sit upright in the small chair by the window, sunlight washing over her pale face. Emma continued to guide Leo, teaching him small ways to help without exhausting himself, showing him that care didn't have to be a burden. It could be shared. One evening, as the golden light of sunset spilled into the apartment, Sarah reached out a trembling hand and clasped Leo's. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've been my strength." Leo's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief and hope. Emma watched silently, feeling a quiet pride of her own, knowing that this moment, this fragile, perfect moment, was the beginning of something brighter. For the first time in days, the apartment felt warm, filled with a tentative optimism. The battle had not been easy, and there were still challenges ahead. But Emma could see that her presence, her care, and Leo's unwavering devotion had made a tangible difference. In that quiet room, among medicine bottles, blankets, and the faint hum of the city outside, life was returning. And for Emma, Leo, and Sarah, it was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, a little kindness, a little courage, and a little help could save a life. Word of Emma's kindness began to spread quietly at first, carried in whispers between neighbors, the soft chatter of the local market, and the polite curiosity of those who had noticed her presence at the old apartment building. People began to talk, not just about the boys selling roses, but about the nurse who had stepped in without hesitation, who had offered help where it was desperately needed. It wasn't long before small acts of generosity began to ripple outward. A neighbor brought fresh vegetables, another left a warm blanket at the door, and someone else donated money for extra medicine. Each gesture was tiny on its own, but together, they created a network of support that made the apartment feel less like a place of struggle and more like a community cared for. Emma watched all of this quietly, heart swelling with both pride and humility. She hadn't expected anything in return. She had simply seen a boy in need, a woman in need, and she had acted. But seeing how one small action, her stepping forward, could inspire others, left her almost speechless. Leo, for his part, looked around at the support with wide-eyed wonder. He had spent so long thinking he had to bear everything himself. Now, he realized he wasn't alone. Not anymore. People cared. People noticed. And for the first time, he could feel the weight of his worries lighten, replaced by something more hopeful: trust. Sarah, too, began to notice a change. She smiled softly, the lines of pain on her face easing as she watched people arrive with meals, gifts, and kind words. "I never thought anyone would care," she whispered one evening, reaching out to Emma. "But you've shown me that kindness still exists." Emma shook her head gently. "It's not just me. It's all of us. One small act can inspire another. You've seen it firsthand. Leo's courage, your own strength, it's contagious. And now, so is the care of everyone around us." The little apartment, once quiet and heavy with worry, became a place of warmth and life. Leo returned to his small routine of helping his mother, but now he had support. The neighbors offered advice. The donations helped cover expenses, and slowly, the house that had felt so fragile began to feel like a home. Emma often paused to watch them, standing quietly in the doorway or at the kitchen counter. There was a certain satisfaction in seeing hope take root, in knowing that her actions had sparked something bigger than herself. It wasn't just about saving a life. It was about inspiring people to care, to notice, to act. And in the city outside, where people hurried past each other every day, unaware of the struggles hidden in small apartments and street corners, there was a reminder. Small gestures, quiet courage, and the willingness to help could ripple far beyond the original act. One person's kindness could inspire many more, and together, those ripples could change lives. Emma smiled softly to herself one evening, watching Leo and his mother laughing quietly over a shared joke. She knew this was only the beginning. What had started with a single rose, a small boy, and a kind nurse had blossomed into something much greater. And in that moment, hope didn't just exist, it flourished. The days grew brighter, not just because of the sun spilling warmth over city streets, but because of the quiet transformation taking place within a small apartment that had once been heavy with worry. Leo returned to school, his backpack slightly heavier now with books and hope, but lighter with the knowledge that he wasn't carrying away the world alone. He walked through familiar halls with newfound confidence, his shoulders no longer burdened by guilt or fear. Every step felt like a small victory, a proof that perseverance and love could create change. At home, Sarah's health continued to improve steadily. The pallor that had once marked her face was replaced by a gentle glow, and her weak breaths grew stronger, steadier. She could move about the apartment with a little more ease, her laughter returning like a soft melody that filled the space with warmth. Emma visited often, but now her presence was lighter, more celebratory than urgent. She would sit at the small kitchen table, sipping tea while Leo recounted the events of his day at school, proudly showing off small achievements, his stories punctuated by laughter and smiles. "You've grown so much," Emma remarked one afternoon, her voice soft, almost wistful. "And not just in school. You've grown in courage, in patience, and in heart. I'm proud of you." Leo's eyes shone as he looked at her. I had help," he said quietly, humility mingling with pride. "I couldn't have done it alone." Emma shook her head gently, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You did more than most could ever imagine. You just needed someone to stand beside you." Sarah, sitting nearby and adjusting a small quilt over her lap, reached out to clasp Leo's hand. "You've been my strength," she said softly. "And now, seeing you grow, seeing you happy, it's more than I could have hoped for." The apartment, once filled with struggle and quiet despair, now brimmed with life, hope, and possibility. Each day became a little brighter, a little lighter, a little more ordinary. And in that ordinariness, they found joy. Emma often paused to watch them, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction and profound warmth. What had begun with a simple gesture, a rose exchanged on a street corner, had grown into something far greater. It had sparked hope, inspired community support, and created a safe, nurturing environment for a young boy and his mother. One evening, as the sun set in soft golden hues, Leo placed a small rose on the kitchen table, smiling up at Emma. "For you," he said simply. Emma's heart swelled. The gesture, though small, carried immense meaning. It wasn't just a flower. It was a symbol of gratitude, trust, and the new beginning they were all living together. For the first time in a long while, the future felt open and full of promise. As Emma watched Leo and his mother laughing quietly over a shared joke, she realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could create the most lasting beginnings. As the days settled into a gentle rhythm, Emma often found herself pausing to reflect on everything that had happened, from the small street corner where a boy sold roses, to the dimly lit apartment where love, courage, and sacrifice had carried the weight of illness. She realized that life was full of moments that could change everything, if only someone had the heart to notice. She thought about Leo, standing tall despite his years, carrying burdens no child should ever face. She thought about his mother, Sarah, and the quiet bravery it took to endure hardship, relying solely on the devotion of her son. And she thought about herself, stepping forward when no one else could, and how one small decision, to care, to act, to help, had rippled far beyond what she could have imagined. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures matter the most. A smile, a word of encouragement, a simple act of kindness. These things could be the difference between despair and hope, between struggle and survival. Emma realized that heroism wasn't always grand or public. Sometimes it was quiet, invisible, found in the decision to stop and help, in the courage to care when it's easier to walk past, in the willingness to share someone else's burden. Looking at Leo and Sarah now, laughing softly together, Emma understood that life was often about connection. about noticing the little people whose struggles might go unseen, about offering a hand when it's needed, even if it seems small. Because even the tiniest act of compassion could grow, spreading warmth, hope, and change in ways no one could predict. She thought of the rose, simple, beautiful, fleeting in its own way, and how something so small had sparked an entire journey of love, bravery, and transformation. The flower had been more than a gift. It had been a bridge, connecting hearts, inspiring action, and reminding everyone involved of the power of care. Emma smiled softly, a quiet contentment settling over her. Life would continue with its challenges, as it always did, but now she carried with her a deep understanding. One person's kindness could ignite hope in countless others, and that, she realized, was a gift more precious than any rose. And as the evening light poured gently through the window, Emma, Leo, and Sarah sat together in calm, quiet happiness, a family not bound by blood alone, but by love, courage, and profound impact of choosing to care. And that is how a single rose changed everything. A boy's love for his mother and a nurse's kindness, reminding us that even the smallest gestures can save lives. But let me leave you with this. What's one act of kindness you'll never forget? Share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story. If this touched your heart, make sure you subscribe to Heartfelt Tales TV. Because here, every story reminds us of the beauty of humanity. Until next time, keep believing in kindness.